Welcome to Mentoring in Real Life, where we talk about what it takes to find and be a great mentor. I'm Angela, and together with my co-host Bill, we know the power of mentoring and what it can do in your life on both sides of the table. If you're interested in learning tips, tricks, and hearing stories about mentoring, you're in the right place. Come join us. Hey, Bill, how you doing today?
Angela, I've just never been this happy. How about you?
Tippy-tappy,
Sweet.
Bill.
Well, Angela, I thought it'd be good to address another of the enduring traits we've recommended, building on past discussions about choice and accountability. This trait was so important it became one of the core values that our previous organization codified for everyone who worked there. That is, do the right thing. It sounds simple, right? I mean, why would anyone knowingly choose to do the wrong thing? Well, of course, life isn't always so simple. Some decisions are easy, some are hard, and some are much more nuanced about what's right. I'm going to start off with one that is a really, really hard decision about doing the right thing. But this one is about life and death. And it was an example that I got to see in a training class for senior executives in the government when we had a visitor come in and talk to us about making tough decisions. What's the right thing to do in a very, very difficult situation. And so this is about Master Chief Special Warfare Operator Britt Slabinski. He was a Medal of Honor recipient. He was on a mission in Afghanistan, and the helicopter that he was on got shot by a rocket as they were trying to insert some folks into the mountains, and it caused a teammate to fall from the helicopter down into the brush below. And so, they were getting inserted, and the Master Chief, at the time he was a Senior Chief Petty Officer, but in any case, he was the senior guy around, and he even expressed when he was talking to us the difficulty. It's like, man, why am I stuck with this one? I don't want to be making a hard decision like this. The decision was, do we go find that guy that fell off the helicopter, or do we just move on with the mission and get out of here? And, he said he was struggling with it a lot. And he says, do I risk everybody on the team to try and get back to that guy, or what am I going to do here? And so he's mulling it over in his mind as just on him, doesn't have anybody else he can talk to. And suddenly it pops in his head. He had been a Boy Scout, and his Boy Scout oath comes to him in his head. He says, I just remembered, on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty. I don't know how to talk about that without getting choked up from the experience. This is a guy who said, well, okay, it just became clear my duty is to go find my fallen comrade. And so he went in there and got a Medal of Honor for the actions that he did. It was a horrendous firefight, and I won't go into all the details. You can look it up online. But this is a discussion about a guy in a hard situation. The easy thing was, let's get the heck out of here. The hard decision was to go find out if that guy was still alive and go get him. And he made that really hard decision because he said, this is, in fact, the right thing to do. I'm going to go do my duty. And so a phenomenally powerful story. And to hear the guy who had done it tell the story was an extraordinary experience. But at the bottom line, I'd have to say he demonstrated some very, very strong character.
Absolutely. Fortunately, most of us will not have to make that kind of life or death situation, but doing the right thing will still matter. I feel like in my own experience, if I go into Costco and then leave and have forgotten something on my list, do I go back into Costco? That's like the hardest decision about going back in.
It's almost the same thing, maybe not quite.
Oh boy, yeah, incredible people.
Yeah, the Master Chief he's such a hero. All right, sorry, moving on.
When it comes to taking some action that is likely immoral, unethical, or illegal, you would think the decision is relatively easy. In general, I'd agree with that, though even that discussion can have very different views on morals, ethics, and legality, depending on the situation and personal beliefs. So our conversation today is going to address how somebody could approach those situations with clarity and purpose. But there is another category, Bill, of decisions where doing the right thing is actually much more nuanced because the decision is related to the good of a company or a department or division, or the good of a project or a product, even a customer or relationship. In many cases, the decisions are not related to anything moral, ethical, or legal. It's simply a decision between a variety of choices where there are no clear right answers. What does doing the right thing mean then?
Yeah. So since this is a podcast about mentoring, we want to be clear about what makes doing the right thing so important to somebody's career. Certainly doing the right thing has its own reward in being able to look in the mirror and feel good about your decisions. But for your career, consistently doing the right thing builds trust with your boss, your peers, and your direct reports. If you think for a second about somebody you trusted completely, what was it that made you trust them? Most people don't answer, well, they were the smartest, or they had the most experience, or they had the biggest title. Instead, they say things like, well, they always told the truth and they kept their promises. They did what they said they would do. They treated people fairly and they could be counted on. Those are all examples of one thing, and that is doing the right thing. Your reputation isn't built during easy moments. It's built during difficult moments when doing the right thing costs you something.
So, what does doing the right thing mean? And doing the right thing means making decisions based on principles rather than convenience. It means asking questions like, is it honest? Is it fair? Would I be proud if this decision were made public? Would I advise someone I care about to make the same decision? And am I protecting people who depend on me? Doing the right thing doesn't always mean everyone will agree with you. It doesn't always mean you'll be rewarded immediately. Sometimes it means taking the harder path because it's the right path. And Bill, an example of this that comes to mind is a friend of mine actually just very recently posted on LinkedIn about how she essentially fired a client who was not ready for her company's offerings. She helps companies develop technology roadmaps, improving operations and making communication, financial transparency, and collaboration within a company more efficient. Her client had put together a strategy assuming they were going to sell to another larger company. And so she put together a strategy assuming that. And then they came back to her and asked her to put together a very different strategy, assuming internal growth, that they're not going to sell to a larger company. And then they were talking again about merging with another company, all very different strategies and very different technical solutions and technology solutions. So even though she could have continued creating roadmaps for them and charging them over and over again, she asked them to get clarity on their strategy and commit to it before hiring her company again. It was short-term loss for her that will lead to a long-term partnership, not only with that client, but based on her reputation with others as well. She's known as a trusted partner, not someone in it to fleece others for money.
Yeah, fantastic example. I've worked with a lot of successful people throughout my career. Some of them were brilliant.
You're welcome.
Oh. Well, some of them were also just sort of enthusiastically average.
You're welcome.
The biggest difference, though, wasn't intelligence, it was trust. People who consistently do the right thing become the people others want to work with, they want to promote, and they want to follow. So technical skills might get you hired, but integrity is what keeps people following you. Competence earns respect. Character earns trust. And trust is the foundation of every successful relationship. That may be a good way to think about why it's so important to do the right thing, but how about some practical ideas for how to approach making difficult decisions? Well, here are at least 4 tests you might want to run your decisions by to see if they still feel right. And I'll date myself by calling the first one the newspaper test. Maybe you call it the news feed test. But how would I feel if this decision appeared on tomorrow's front page? Would I proudly show it to my family? If not, well, okay, that's valuable information to think about. The sleep test, can I sleep well after I make this decision? Will I have the peace of mind to sleep well? Because that's worth a lot more than almost any short-term gain you can identify. The mentor test, if someone I deeply respect watched this decision, would I be proud? Would they be proud? Many difficult choices become much clearer when you try to view them through somebody else's eyes. And finally, the legacy test. 5 years from now, will I be proud that I made this choice? Very few people regret being honest. Many regret taking shortcuts.
So, why do some people sometimes make bad decisions? Are they all bad people? Of course not. Even ethical failures don't necessarily come from bad people. The failure can begin with small compromises like, it's only this one time, or no one will notice. Everyone else does it. Or I'm under too much pressure. I got to cut some corners here. Unfortunately, small compromises can become habits, and habits define culture. Culture can shape character. Integrity is usually not lost all at once. More likely, it's lost one small exception at a time. That's why keeping your own personal standards matters so much.
Yeah, the other thing that sometimes makes doing the right thing harder is that it often requires some courage and even some humility. There's a number of situations that you may have to, for instance, speak up when it's uncomfortable, admit a mistake. Lord knows I've had to do that many, many times through my career. Deliver,
Same.
yeah, deliver difficult feedback, tell a customer something they don't want to hear, say no to somebody who has more authority than you do, and accept responsibility instead of making excuses. These moments define being a leader. That is to say, in these moments, you're choosing responsibility over comfort.
There are other times when we're not addressing something illegal or immoral or unethical. What if you disagree with a decision or a way forward from your leadership? They're not doing anything illegal, maybe, but perhaps the decision they're making you feel is not in the best interest of the project or the company. Doing the right thing can sometimes have multiple answers, and where you sit in the organization or on the team may influence what seems right to you. It's important to realize, particularly in the business world, that a person's position in an organization can change their perspective on what's right for the organization. So what may seem like the obvious right choice on a smaller project team might be unexecutable because of funding limits, because of political constraints, because of even personal preferences of a senior leader. How you build a widget or a service may not have an ethically right or wrong choice. And in such cases, trying to gain perspective on how other stakeholders view the choice will help you understand the choices and perhaps make the better right decision. Or when a company policy may make an experience for the buyer less than optimal, you as the manager have the opportunity to address and fix it. Bill, I think you have a recent example of that.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up just now. I just had to go through a car buying experience where I went to the dealership and decided to pay for the top of the line version of a model of car, and because I wanted all the bells and whistles. And I got home and found out they didn't put the right mirror on there to have a garage door opener. I got every other bell and whistle, but I can't open the garage door. So I called the manager and said, dude, I'm not sure I understand this. I paid a lot of money to get the top of the line and have all the nice bells and whistles on the car. And what's up with not having a garage door opener? He said, Bill, I'm sorry. I'm with you on this one. I don't understand why the company decided to take that feature out of the top of the line model. But I agree with you. If you come in, I'll give you the right mirror, and didn't charge me for it. And so it's an example of somebody saying, okay, the company made this decision, but I know that's not the right thing. And I had, since I'm not doing anything illegal, I'm going to make sure that the customer gets what I think is the right answer. So it's important to recognize that doing the right thing isn't always a question of ethics or morals. And really what that means is different folks can legitimately have different views on what's right. Your challenge in those cases is to looking at all the nuances of the situation and making a decision that best aligns with your principles and your sense of doing right.
Another example that comes to mind is, in the early days of Apple and Microsoft being competitors, I remember within our own organization and our projects, we saw holy wars waged between people who were in the Apple camp and those that were in the Microsoft camp, right? And a decision had to be made on which platform would be used. If that decision was against what you wanted, once you've had the opportunity to make your case and leadership went the other way, it's time to just move forward. Those still might be, there still might be holy wars waged over different platforms being
Undoubtedly.
used. I'm sure there are. And in that case, you as the employee have two choices: accept it and move forward, or find someplace else to work. It was not an illegal or unethical or immoral decision. And the right thing to do is to disagree and then commit to continuing the work at hand. Folding your arms in front of you and pouting or quietly quitting is not doing the right thing. It's actually bad behavior.
In any case, I would suggest that making that kind of tough choice gets a bit easier when you spend the time developing the habits that build such character for yourself. So, what habits? Well, they aren't rocket science, but they do seem to work probably as a result of their simplicity. So, let's start off with keep your promises, admit mistakes quickly, give credit generously, tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable, treat everyone with respect, make decisions you'd be proud to explain. The small daily choices help create a lifelong reputation. And a closing thought to try and make the case crystal clear. Years from now, people probably won't remember every project you completed or every meeting you attended, but they will remember how you treated people. They will remember whether they could trust you. They will remember your actions and whether or not they matched your words. Success comes and goes, titles come and go, and money comes and goes, but your character follows you everywhere. Every day, you have an opportunity to build a reputation that opens doors, not because you're the smartest person in the room, but because you're the person others know will do the right thing. That's one of the greatest competitive advantages you're ever going to have. Angela, what did I miss?
This was a really good high level view of doing the right thing. And some other examples that came to mind that we'll talk about in future pods, things like doing the right thing also means quelling gossip, for example, in the workplace, and how, as a mentor, you can help your mentees do just that, and how, as a mentee, you can help your peers make sure you do just that. So if people have other examples of these kind of habits that are inherently part of the workplace, we'd love to hear from you and make sure that we're incorporating, questions that you might have about what it means to do the right thing in the workplace, especially in the more nuanced situations.
Awesome. Yep. We would love to hear those questions.
Yeah. Well, in conclusion, thank you for listening to this episode of Mentoring in Real Life. If you have thoughts or questions, please feel free to leave us a comment or send us an email, which we've included in the show notes. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate the podcast, and share with a friend. Until next time, help others climb.